Get in touch with your inner warrior and learn the ancient Chinese fighting art of Kung Fu Sansu. This powerful martial art will help you improve your health, self-defense skills, and confidence. Our experienced instructor, Master Eric K. Hermansen, welcomes students of all skill levels, ages, and abilities. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity to learn from the best. Visit kungfusansumaster.com to sign up for classes today.
We're all here. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
My name's Eric Hermansen, and I've been doing Kung Fu since 1986. And I'm an 8th degree black belt, which is a master. Kung Fu the way we go is kind of compared to the school system. First grade through high school is like white, yellow, green, brown, and then black. 5 belts. So high school, you become a black belt when you graduate high school, so to speak. And then you really start learning and you go for your master's degree, which takes 8 years. So it takes about 4 years to go from white belt to black belt. And then it takes 8 years to get your master's degree. So you go up, when you get your black belt, you train for a whole year, and then you become what's called first degree black belt. Train for another year, then second degree, and so on, 8 degrees. Kung Fu was developed in China, and it's about 4,000 years old. And the Chinese, their lives were full of war. One emperor took over, another, they killed that emperor, this emperor took over. They had all these different provinces, and they were always fighting and killing each other for centuries in war. And back then they didn't have guns, they fought with swords and weaponry. So the Chinese were the ones that actually sophisticated fighting. They actually studied it in their monasteries, the monks. And they had the opportunity to use prisoners of war and criminals and stuff, and they experimented on them. So this art actually came from a lot of suffering. So they would take a prisoner, they say, come on up here, we'll set you free today, and give them a sword, you fight them. So they do some techniques, they hit the guy in the radial nerve, they found out that he dropped the sword every time. He hit that nerve, the hand opens, and he dropped his sword. They make a note, so all the masters are studying. And when the guy's cut open from the sword, they look and all the nerves and what happens here and there. So the anatomy and physiology of the human body is taken into account in Kung Fu. So this art was built for survival. Okay, that was the need of the day, to live. And so the monks, when they went to get provisions for their monastery, they would be robbed all the time, killed and robbed. So they had to defend themselves. So they developed this martial art. And they studied it and they evolved it, and they, like I said, they had prisoners of war to experiment on, and it's been time tested in battle and combat, okay? Hand-to-hand combat. So China is basically, Kung Fu is considered the grandfather of martial arts. Okay? It kind of spread throughout the world after that. At one time, the government of China helped the monks in the monastery. They liked their fighting ability, and so the emperor gave them a lot of money. They built this big Shaolin temple, and they supported the monks in these fighting techniques that they kept secret. They only taught their family or the monks themselves or the military that the emperor decided to learn. So the grandfather of martial arts, at another time in China, the emperor, the evil emperor, wanted to kill all the Kung Fu masters. And he put money on their heads and he wanted them all dead because they were his enemy. So a lot of the masters fled the country or they would have suffered a terrible, torturous death. And so they went to Okinawa, and the art transformed with the Japanese there and it became known as Okinawa-te about 400 years ago. And it changed with the culture of the Japanese. It's a bit different culture than Chinese. And the Japanese were teaching hundreds of soldiers, not any longer in a monastery, but now they're teaching soldiers. So how do you teach a bunch of soldiers how to fight? You line up 100 men and you punch, ha, 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 ha. So it became kind of linear. Their thought was the quickest distance between 2 points is a straight line, which is true, but if there's something in between that line, you need to go around it, okay? So that's, you'll see in some of the karate is very linear like this. Where Kung Fu, we use a lot of circular movements that come around and the circle replenishes itself. And like the figure 8, okay, the infinity sign. It keeps generating the power. And it traveled to Korea, became Taekwondo, became Jiu-Jitsu, became Ninjutsu. All those arts can go back to the grandfather of martial arts in China, okay? And they all change, and they all have different aspects that they were really good at. So, my grandmaster, Qin Su Dek was his name, and Chinese put the last name first, so his last name was Qin. His name was Dek, Qin Su Dek. His Kung Fu is in his family for 5 generations. His great-great-great-grandfather was a monk. He was orphaned at 10 years old, and the monastery took him in and took care of him. He learned Kung Fu in the monastery. When he left in his 30s, he acquired some training manuals about this big, old, ancient books that are turned into dust. And they contain the fighting techniques of the art. They also contain healing aspects of the art. Acupuncture, that all came from a fighting art. And this world's best fighting art actually came from the Kuan Yin Monastery, which is the goddess of mercy. Okay, so that's the yin and the yang. So his great-great-great-grandfather was a monk. He learned the art. He passed it down in his family 5 generations. So his family became really powerful in China. They owned a huge province that they ruled, as big as Orange County, California. His uncle ruled that province. His name was Ni Yao Ji. He was Qin Mun Dan. He was a crazy devil, they called him. He was like 6'3". And if anybody wanted to open a business, close a business, they had to ask him. They had to ask Kung. And if anybody wanted to challenge him, they would have a circle, and they actually fought to the death, or somebody was maimed and couldn't fight anymore. So it was pretty serious stuff. So Jimmy Wu, Qin Su Dek, he was the prize student of his uncle, and he was sent to different parts of the village to teach the young man how to fight. For a while, for years, you may only learn forms. Forms are like shadow boxing. They represent fighting, okay? The movements of people attacking from different angles. Until you improved your character, and then you were taught fighting moves, okay? So he was pretty popular, and his parents feared for his life, so he left China. They sent him to America, and he got a passport on the black market with the name Jimmy H. Wu. So he came to America by the name Jimmy H. Wu. He started teaching only Chinese in America at a brotherhood that they have in LA, okay? Then he started teaching Americans in 1958, and the Chinese Tom gave him a hard time and told him, you can't teach our art to foreigners. We don't want our fighting secrets stuff. But he didn't want his art to die with him. He wanted to be passed on, so he went ahead and defied them and started teaching Americans Kung Fu. That really brought Kung Fu to America. Back in 1958, Americans didn't know the name Kung Fu. They would think it was a Chinese restaurant. So he called it Karate Kung Fu. Karate, the Japanese actually popularized sport fighting, okay? And so he called it Karate Kung Fu. My teacher learned from him and a teacher that learned from him, so I'm like third generation from him, from his 5 families down in his, passed down 5 generations. So this art is not for competition, it's not for sport, it's not, it's strictly for your life, okay? It's strictly for self-defense on the street. So we don't do things that sports do. When you have a sport and you make fighting a sport, you have rules, right? And you put different weights against each other, you have a referee, you have a controlled environment. Out there, where evil lurks, you're going to be attacked and hurt and left for dead, okay? So I'm going to show you guys some things today, but I take it real serious because it is real serious. This is only about you surviving if you get attacked, right? So you learn first aid, why?